All right, we're back. Adversity Podcast. I am your host, Mambo, and we got your other host, Josh. What's up, Josh?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I guess we were out for a couple of weeks, a little vacation, and then we had some Turkey Day and everything going on with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. You like soccer at all?
Man, I love football.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for the World Cup, man. I've been trying to catch a full game.
Yeah.
And, man, I know right now as we're recording this, the USA is playing right now.
And they were tied 0-0 going into the half, so I wonder where they're at now.
Yeah, we'll find out at the end of this podcast
Once this is over, we'll be looking it up for sure.
So Adversity Podcast, real people, real stories. And, of course, we always have some great guests. Who do we have today?
Today, we're fortunate that we have my buddy Greg White. Greg and I have been friends for a couple years now, right, Greg?
Yeah, about 2 years.
So we got a chance to meet at a dinner party. Funny story, my wife actually sat down across from his wife, and I looked down and she's eating his salad, and so I had to go out there and try and save the day. Ended up chatting it up with Greg and realized there was no saving the salad or the day, so I just left her there and went back into the table that we were sitting at.
You know what I've realized about you, and when you make friends, it's always an interesting story. We need to do a podcast about how you meet people, Josh, because it's always interesting.
Yeah, there's some very unique stories in that one for sure.
Yeah. So, Greg, what do you do for a living?
I'm a glazing contractor, Mambo. So what we do is we furnish and install very high-end doors and windows for luxury residential projects.
And what got you into that field?
Well, I didn't grow up wanting to sell doors and windows.
Right.
I wanted to play basketball, and then I wanted to be a golfer a little bit, when I got a little bit older. But I went to college, and I started the hustle. I had this door-to-door sales job. I had to sell signs. It was my first job. It was the very first job I got, and I just had to take something,
Right.
And it was killing me. I mean, I had to drive the whole way into the city and then have this little territory for them and the whole way back and the gas and the car payment and everything, whatever. So anyway, long story short, I get this job, which I thought was my dream job, where I got to wear a suit and tie, and I got a company car, and I had an American Express that I didn't have to pay. I could chart, and I was supposed to take people to lunch every day and to dinner twice a week and do a big event with the client, once a month. And I mean, I was a young man. I thought that was it, and I was working with adults, and I'm like, okay, I'm good.
I made it.
Yeah, and then a recruiter reached out and said, do you want to sell doors and windows? And I thought, isn't this kind of like a downgrade situation? And I explained to him, my situation. He's like, why don't you come in? So I did. I came in and went through the interviewing process, and they walked me around. I smelled all the fresh cut wood and saw them building the stuff, and I'm like, this is different, So
Right.
We sit down in the conference room, and he just writes down a number on a piece of paper and slides it over and says, how would you, how would you like to be making that much money? And I was like, well, I really don't like to wear a tie. Truth be told. So if we want to go no, it was nowhere near that. But, if we want to go that route, I could go cash, So, yeah, it's kind of coincidental.
So how long did it take before I mean, you've been doing it for a long time, obviously, but how long did you say, like, this is what I want to do?
I don't know when that sort of plateau came, but I started in 91, so this will be my 32nd year coming up.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, and thank you. And I was fortunate enough, I got hired by a company, Pella. You may know the name Pella. They're a national manufacturer. And they offered some very good training and knowledge, building up your skill set and whatever. And of course, you look back and you work your way up the ranks at a place, and you don't realize, but that gives you such a great foundation, right? And now you've got value in the industry. And I was a little sort of an entrepreneurial guy, so I just quit and said, I'm going to do this on my own. And we created a construction company back in Pittsburgh area.
Okay.
And because I would do the math, and they made the mistake of letting me see a report one day that showed how much gross profit I had generated for the company. And it was like $2.2 million. And I was making like 80 grand of it. And I'm like, I think I can figure out a way to keep more of that.
At least half of that,
right?
There's a way in there somewhere. $1 million.
Yeah.
And did you want to start your own company when you seen that number?
Well, yeah, and part of it is you're in meetings with people, and you've got bosses, and bosses have bosses, and you realize what you're contributing, and you're like, well, I can do that, and I can do that, and I can do what that guy does. So then you just start to, it's how much you're going to bite off. Like,
Right.
Are you going to go pro? I used to tell my cousin it's like going pro versus working for the man.
Yeah.
Right.
Although going pro is not.
Well,
Maybe that's not the best analogy, but
so and it's just there's only two of you in that business. So was it just you and Kelly when you started it in Pittsburgh?
no. When I started, I was an employee for a company, and then when I resigned back in Pittsburgh and I started my construction company, Kelly, I came to her and I said, "Look, we need good accounting. We need solid accounting. We're going to be able to have to job cost things and know whether." Our profit levels are right, if our pricing is right, so on and so forth. So I bought QuickBooks and I gave it to her and I said, learn it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and she
did.
And she's an English major. She doesn't know much about accounting and computers. Flashback, guys. This is like 1996 or something. We had that old Gateway computer that you bought for $3,000. It was like big as this table, with the dial-up, and I mean, people just weren't as savvy as they are now.
Right.
But, things happen for a reason. You look back. And,
Was that a scary moment for you? Thinking you made it. Yeah, would you say you were making like in your early 20s, like 30-some a year, and then here you are making 80,000? And was that a scary moment for you to say to take that next step?
It was, but you just can't deny the math. You just can't. Like, how do you sleep at night when you think I'm working really hard and I'm not taking home as much as I should? So I had sort of a unique situation there where I left the company and I became a customer of the company, but I knew the company inside out. So I was the best in my mind. I was the best customer they could have,
right?
Because I knew exactly how their information flowed through their business, and they had a retail showroom. I didn't have to invest the overhead. I would supply the sales to go out and estimate and close the jobs, and then I would hire installers to follow me around and do the work. And essentially, that's what I'm doing out here. But that whole business failed.
Your first try.
Total failure. We lost everything.
And do you know why? Or,
well, yeah, looking back, first of all, it's the wrong place to open a door and window place, right? A door and window business. Pittsburgh, it's cold, so windows are small. Typically, there are very few in a house. There aren't a lot of them. Boy, when I flew out here and I saw all the architecture and all the glazing and the people wanting to see the mountains or the ocean or what have you, I'm like, these people want to buy glass. I don't have to, say, hey, let's make these bigger, let's do more. So it was the wrong place, and there was no licensing in the state of Pennsylvania. So I was competing against my subs for some of the same work.
wow.
Oh, wow.
They'd give a bid to me, and they'd give a bid to the customer, the same bid.
Wow.
Man, that's so crazy, dude.
So it was easy market entry, and it was great for a guy like me that wanted to dip his toe in the water, mortgage his house, take all of his money out of his retirement account, start this business, lose it all. The market, the entry market price was low, but I learned some really valuable lessons.
Right.
And I ended up going to work for Pella in California. They brought us out here.
Really?
After I retired from them or resigned rather, had that business and it didn't work out, I let them know I was back on the market, and they gave me a couple of areas that there might be opportunity, and LA was one of those. So that's how we got out here.
So what year was that you guys moved out here to California?
2003.
Wow, 2003. So you went back to work for Pella. How long did you work for them before you were like, all right, I'm ready to do this thing again?
Well, when the housing bubble burst,
Really?
I started this business in 08, 09.
Wow.
Wow.
So they paid to move my family out here, and they helped me a little bit during the transition with legal fees and things for negotiating this business closing. And I owed them 5 years. I promised I'd give them 5 years, and I'd pay back the money that they advanced me. And I did that, and once I did my 5 years, it was 2008, baby, the countrywide, 2009, the countrywide loan stuff was hitting the fan. And man, if I didn't realize this because the cost of living is so much more in Southern California than it is in Pittsburgh, but I could have bought a house as soon as I got out here because they weren't verifying anything. And I was able to hustle enough that I would have never missed a mortgage payment, and I would have been one of those people that would have been a benefit of this. But you know how that whole thing blew up. But the writing was on the wall at my company. We had 3 divisions. We had a commercial division, we had a trade division, and we had a retail division. I was in the retail division. I was managing that part of the business. Up to Bakersfield, over to San Luis, down Santa Barbara, into L.A., West L.A., Encino, Beverly Hills, and Pasadena. Those were sort of my areas, that big chunk of turf. So I forget where I was going with this.
We were talking about the 08 market, and then you making that transition after the 5 year.
We had 3 business segments, and we were the smallest of the 3, but we were the most profitable. But I could tell that the owner, when he was going to downsize, that he was going to take it out of our end. And I thought, I got to leave before
that happens.
Before that happens,
something happens, and I lose my job, unexpectedly. Let's get a plan together and let's do it. So
when you went into it for the second run, what do you think you were able to take out of that failure situation of the first run, and really put yourself in a better position for, I guess, what you could say, round 2?
That's a great question. I never really think of it that way. But going back, it's not just the business that went bad in Pennsylvania. It's all of your life experiences, the good and the bad, right? So you learn along the way. So this second time around, my wife and I, we agreed no employees. And that preference, that experience I gathered from working at Pella with employees and every other place that I worked with employees. I mean, if you're a manager, employees are a grind.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's always sick. Somebody's grandmother's dying. Somebody's car is broken down. I mean, I'm sympathetic, but, people get pregnant. People die. It's rough enough just to manage your own life. So, so we want to keep it as slim as possible, the goal being 0. And other than ourselves. And we've been able to do that. And then I also realized that, knowing the business model, I realized that I had a lot of contacts out there in the construction industry. And if I went out there and just talked to these guys and said, look, I'm going to be a door and window dealer now. I helped you out on this project, this one, would you support me? And I had some loyal followers right off the bat. So I realized that the manufacturers need to sell doors and windows. And if you come to them and you have a book of business, they cannot turn you down. At that time, they couldn't turn you down.
Wow.
So I had a little leverage over the manufacturers, because normally they would say, hey, look, you have to have this many employees. You have to have a retail brick and mortar location. You have to be open, for this business. And you have to have so much credit line and all this stuff. And I did it all for what I had in my wallet at the time.
So when you came to California and you had the business fail in Pittsburgh, when did you realize like that model's going to work in California?
Well, right around that time, it still was pretty scary, right?
Right.
Things weren't going well, and I remember getting my first deposit check, and it was around Christmas time. It was for this job on PCH down across from Pepperdine. I'll never forget it. First job I get, it's like a $600,000-$700,000 window order. So the guy gives me a deposit, and I have a deal with him. I'm like, look, I'm just going to give you the manufacturer's price, essentially let you buy direct. I'm going to ask you to pay me X amount of dollars to manage this project for you. And so you can give them a check for their deposit, and I'll take a $5,000 advance. I thought I was asking for a lot of money, right? $5,000. So at the time, I mean, we got it, and I was ecstatic because it was a big job, and I knew that that was money was going to flow down the way. But I went and I signed that check, and I put it in an ATM, and they wouldn't cash it, and they wouldn't give it back to me either. And I couldn't go back to the customer and say, hey, I need a new check.
Right.
That would have been pretty you know, humbling. So we needed that money for Christmas, you know, and so finally, I mean, we just kept on it with the bank, and it was because the bank account name was in the business name, and I sign it with my personal signature, and the machine kicked it out and said signatures do not match. Well, we needed that money, man.
Right.
So we got it, you know, in time. But then the checks, you know, the checks start getting bigger, and the jobs start getting bigger, and you get a little bit of a reputation as, you know, this guy can handle the really tough ones, and money becomes less of an issue, and experience becomes more valuable. And yeah, it was the Pittsburgh thing would work if you had the volume like you do out here, and you have the architecture that you do out here. So we're very fortunate to have made that move, and all those little things line up so that we could work our way out here.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have Greg on on the podcast is, you know, my wife and I own our business, right? We've got 33 employees. And that's something that he and I bounce off each other a lot. You know, there's pros and cons to having employees versus not having employees. But the way that they've built this business, it's a very successful business model. And there's so many people out there that are going to be listening to us that, you know, maybe they're in a position where they want to kind of step away. They want to find a, you know, kind of what he saw. They see the opportunity that's in front of them, and they've got that entrepreneurial spirit where they want to go out and tackle it.
Right.
And I think a lot of times what we don't do is we don't set forth goals. We don't set forth what is this going to cost us, right? We just jump out there and we do it. Right. And we don't know if we need people or not. And we'll just start hiring people because we think we need a receptionist. We think we need an inventory manager. We think we need all these different pieces. Like for Sarah and I, that was what COVID did for us. When we had to furlough everyone, it really taught us what we did and did not need, right? So when we started bringing people back, we weren't just bringing people back to fill a spot. We were bringing people back because we knew that we needed them in that position for that, because that was something that Sarah and I could not do. And unfortunately, an automotive dealership, you need those people, right? I'm not going to be back there changing oil or take, you know, you don't want, I mean, I could, but I don't think you want me to, or changing out an engine or a transmission or anything like that, right? I mean, it might not go very far if I end up doing it. But, you know, one of the things that Greg and Kelly have done really well is that reputation. And I think what the people that are listening to us is, there's two things about this. Number one, you can't be scared to fail. If you're going to take that, you're going to bite off that chunk, you can't be scared to fail. And number two, if you do, you've got to have the wherewithal to get back up and get yourself back on the horse and keep riding.
Yeah, and what did you learn from that failure?
Exactly. Yeah. What are you learning from that to move forward? Because when round two does present itself and you're ready to go into that. And I like how Greg and Kelly were like, the thing we learned was we can do this, the two of us. We've got this dialed in, because then there is no headache, right? You know, it's just the two of them. They're making the decisions, and you don't have to worry about someone calling in sick. You don't have to worry about vacation time. You don't have to worry about all the random things that happen when you have a bunch of employees.
Right. Besides learning that you were in the wrong area when you had your business back in Pittsburgh, what else did you learn from round one of this?
Well, I really appreciate the fact that there's licensing criteria in California.
Right.
So the competition that you keep, even though when we differentiate ourselves from other people that might be bidding the same work that we bid, the competition that you keep out here at least has some degree of expertise, even though, like, sometimes I'll go up against someone that's, you know, a brand new person in the industry, and I convince the customers, you know, they say somebody else's quote is lower. I said, well, would you show it to me? And I look at it, and it's wrong everywhere, you know? And I go, I'm embarrassed that we're in the same conversation, because, and it's very hard for the customer to know, because the documents that you see are just not very user-friendly. They're not very intuitive. So, anyway, so, you know, things along that line. Also, in that first go round, I did a lot of in-home selling, and I really had a lot of training, fortunately, from Pella, and experience. I think when we left there coming out here, I had been in approximately 10,000 homes. So sitting at the home with the order form in your hand, measuring windows and doors, calculating the labor and and asking somebody for a deposit, closing.
So you did a lot of this stuff yourself.
Oh, I have never cut a board in two pieces with a saw. I am not a tool guy. I hire a handyman for everything. I came to this from the sales side, wanting to be a professional.
Right.
But, I don't have $1 million smile or, a Mr. Olympia physique. Nobody's going to buy something from me because I'm pretty or something like that because they like me or whatever. I need it tangible. I need a product to sell. And I need to be able to communicate to people how it's different or better, for their solution.
Right.
So I realized that that sales is everything. That closing is everything. And that it's a VIP profession. Mm-hmm. So I used to just listen to tapes all the time when I was driving. I used to subscribe to these things for action selling and some different stuff, and just everybody thought it was corny, but man, it makes a difference.
Yeah. I do that a lot, and I get the same thing, and I've been doing it for years already. Like, you get in your car with your friends, and they're like, "What are you listening to?"
Yeah. Don't you already know that stuff or whatever?
Yeah, but I mean, I like that you're sharing that because that's a great opportunity for people to I'll call it school, right. Listening to something that motivates you or something that's going to teach you more in your field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a particular person that you listen to?
Well, I'll have to be honest. That has waned quite a bit because I'm so overwhelmingly busy. Our business just continues to increase by leaps and bounds, and I don't know how we're doing it, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. The jobs are getting bigger and more complicated. There are fewer of them, but they take a lot of time. So I have not been sharpening the saw, recently, but early stuff was like Brian Tracy, very fundamental.
Yeah, he's real. That's one of the guys that I listen to because I wanted to understand. I'm not in the sales world, but when I would go to meetings and they would talk about where sales is struggling, mm-hmm. I wanted to learn like why is it struggling or if they said something, I wanted to know why. So right. Brian Tracy is definitely one that
questions are very important. And Pella had this thing they subscribed to that I think Toyota was promoting. It's called Kaizen, mm-hmm. and it stands for continuous improvement. And there's a kind of a full circle here, but being through a few Kaizen events, I realized it was for this big corporation to realize that if they put their lumber closer to the guy that needs it on the machine, that little bit of time and space that they've saved saves them money, right? And they would break it down to every single action. Literally, guys, we had members from every part of our business in the conference room, and we had those 3M notepads, right. And you were supposed to break down your action into the smallest increments, like grab a manila folder, write the customer's name on the folder, get this, get that, put it here, send this email, do this. And we had to process one order through our company, it took 1,000 steps, if you count everybody's steps. Wow. We Kaizened it down to 280.
Wow. Which saved time and money.
And you can do more business if you're more efficient. Right. So we're applying all that now. I don't hand something off to a purchasing agent and let them forget to assign the PO and send it to the manufacturer. I do that. I do all the billing. I do everything. So there's a guy with 31 years experience doing everything. There's no weak link in the chain. So that's something that I learned and kind of came about through that. And I did the Sandler Sales Institute, and I did a few other things. And what's that guy's name? Tony Robbins. I used to listen to his stuff.
And Grant Cardone's got some good stuff out there too,
Yeah, so totally into being the best you could be. And I have to say, this is part of it. Being from Pittsburgh and growing up in the 70s when the Steelers were just dominating.
Right.
I mean, you as a kid, I might have just hit that sweet spot age between like 76 and 80 when they were killing it. But you had an expectation, you know, and you weren't afraid to give it your all, but you were going to, you know, leave it out there, but you wanted to be a champion.
Right.
We grew up that way. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to point out too is you mentioned some of the stuff you used to listen to in your car. Till this date, a lot of those systems you still use them on what you do, right?
Yes, and you know, at my last job, the second stint with Pella out here, I was more of in a management capacity, and I was trying to teach people this stuff. I was passionate about it. I was like, look, you can make $400 or $500 an hour. Figure this out. Like, do you realize the opportunity you have in front of you? Be a professional at this. Just don't go in and wing it.
Yeah.
You know where you got to be. You want to sign that deal, you need to be at the kitchen table.
Right.
This is where people make their decisions. This is where they're going to write you the check. They want to drag you around the house and show you the windows. Well, that's part of it, but you need to get to the table.
Get to the table.
That's phase one.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. So understanding that sequencing and having some of those good habits from those guys that you pick up, it does become part of your norm.
And right now, is it just still you and your wife, and you guys contract the work and everything, or
it is? Yeah, it is. That's
so you're going with the system that's been working for you since the beginning, almost.
And we really partner with every manufacturer. We represent probably 6 or 7 different manufacturers. They're partners of ours. We're very close, and I'm a top customer of each one of them. So, and they recognize what I bring to the table, and they do extra things for us. So we are able to put some of our tasks off on them. And my installers are awesome, and I'm able, again, I'm most of their work, and we kind of teach each other how we like to do business, and we have a pretty good combination there, but they take some of the workload. And what's left, the administrative, we do very little marketing, but just the everyday legal, insurance, all that sort of stuff, my wife and I handle.
And how is it? I mean, you could probably answer this too, Josh. But me and my wife, I think about like working together. I don't know how long that would work for us,
right?
But you guys have been doing it. How does that go? Trying to separate the business side with the personal side.
Well, it's challenging, right? The first 6 years we were on our own. We worked together out of our home. And then, we've been married 27 years.
Wow.
Right. So we had 6 years together in the house, and then we've had these last like 19 years. It's been a combination of home and office, but my wife is a saint, man. If she wasn't as forgiving as she was, Josh will tell you, we'll be out and I'll be stepping out to take a phone call, or I'll be on my phone sending an email or on my iPad, and it's a sacrifice for her because she really wants to have my attention, but she's very understanding, and that's a huge help.
Yeah, his wife is a saint. She's awesome. She's a great woman.
Yeah, I got really lucky, and
And she's feistier than shit too.
That helps. What about you, Josh? Like, has that been a struggle too?
We've talked about a little bit, here, on this podcast of working with your spouse, and it's got its challenges, right? But it's like anything. If you're willing to work at it, and you're willing to put in the work, and you're willing to, grow with each other, you eventually kind of morph into a sweet spot, and it actually can be somewhat enjoyable, right? Because you're getting to share some of these moments together. Before we worked together, I would come home and we'd have this monster day at my store in Texas, and she would have a big day. She was working for Chase at the time, and we were kind of sharing stories of each other's day with what happened, but you really don't understand what's going on. Whereas now, with us both being at the store, it's not like we're sharing stories. We'll just kind of rehash some things that may have happened that day, and we both know exactly what was going on, the situation, the scenario. And so it allows you to kind of navigate through some situations a little bit easier than you would, in some with working with someone else, right? That you don't share that chemistry with. But at the end of the day, you know, it's work, and like Greg said, it can be challenging. But if you respect your partner, which both of us respect our wives, we love our wives very much. If you respect them, and you listen, and you're not always, you know, the one talking, then you'd be amazed at how well it can work out.
Yeah, and I noticed when you said that sometimes you had to, you know, pick up the phone when it was husband and wife time. I mean, me and my wife don't work together, but I have to do that a lot, and sometimes it's hard for her to understand that, you know, I do have to pick up the phone.
Right.
I do have to send that email. So I guess I would think it would be a more understanding when you're in business with your partner, but it's the same struggle almost.
And they still want their time. You know, you still have to be a husband.
Yeah.
Right? You still have to be there for them, and there's emotional and physical needs that they need out of you, you know, that you've got to respond to. And what I love about Greg and Kelly's story is when you see them out together, and we get to spend a lot of time with them. We golf together. We have dinner with. We were at their house last night for Thanksgiving. You know, we get to spend a lot of time and kind of see the chemistry that they have together. And it's really cool, you know, and it's encouraging. Right. I mean, that's, I think, a big thing that people can pull away from this is they've been married for 27 years, you said?
27, yeah.
And I mean, they've moved from Pittsburgh to California. They've been through one business. Now they're on a second that's actually, you know, killing it. And, you know, when you talk to Kelly, you know, the way she looks at Greg still, it's fun because Sarah and I, will sit behind him sometimes at the restaurant, and they'll be up at the bar talking, hanging out, and you'll just see Kelly turn around and look at him. And there's still that sparkle, right? There's still that it's her man. And the way he looks at her, it's the same thing. You know, this is my girl, that we're in this thing together. And it's just, when you've got people like that you can like pull from, it's a huge opportunity for Sarah and I, who have only been married, you know, we're working on 11 years. So it's fun to have that in your life because it gives you hope that at year 25, 26, 27, there's going to be that same look. There's going to be that same passion. There's going to be that same perspective that there is now. If anything, it's deeper because you spent more time together.
Right. And is it hard to balance the personal and the business? Because I know with me, it's easy because I know my wife just listens to me to be an ear when I'm trying to tell her about what's going on in my world.
Right.
And that's it. Like, you know, after she hears me out, it's like, you know, husband and wife time. But you guys both, you know, deal with each other's partners when it comes to business and personal. So is it hard to balance the business and the personal stuff?
Sometimes. I mean, and sometimes it's not. You know, I think it gets easier over time. What do you think, Greg?
Well, again, my wife is so understanding. It's hard for me to even answer this question because if she was like some other people, I think might be, it would really cause a lot of friction. Yeah. And I'll tell you where else it's a challenge. And to put this in the perspective of your audience that might be entrepreneurial and thinking about going out there and starting a business, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for the American way. And, you know, I think that's the greatest thing in the world, that you can do these kinds of things. But, you know, you can get a black eye and you can get a bloody nose, and you shouldn't do it blindly. So to Josh's point, you know, you want to try to work things out in advance and do as much planning as you can and get some good counsel for sure. But vacations, time away from the business, this business that consumes you. We've been talking about some of the nice things about it, not having employees, whatever. Vacations, you don't have a vacation. You're never on vacation. You're always on call. So again, having a spouse that not only gives you the day-to-day latitude that you need to keep all those balls up in the air, but knowing when you go on vacation that you're going to be working every morning until about noon. And I hear her get her shower, and I see her walking around getting ready, and I'm like, okay, it's about time for me to quit work and get in the shower. I got to be a husband again. So there are those challenges too. Don't let those catch anybody.
So even when you're on vacation, you still got to get the job done.
Oh yeah. That's a downside, but we knew that. We took it.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out too is I'll share a story about a friend who worked, and his partner never understood. But I recently talked to him maybe a couple months ago, and they're no longer together. But he got the success he wanted, but he didn't realize that he wasn't paying attention to what now he knows. Like, man, I wish my family was here to enjoy this with me now.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, was there a point where you said, like, man, I should have done this, or I should have gone on vacation instead of taking this business meeting or whatever? And he said there was many points like that throughout him building his business and everything. So I think it's important for anyone listening, that wants to take that step, that there is a balance. I mean, and I'm glad you guys are sharing this, because both your partners are in the business with you guys. Yeah.
And there is a balance, and you can't lean too much one way or the other, right? Because the business needs your time, just like the family does. But I think there's a place where you can kind of almost, I say, check your ambition. Because if you don't check your ambition will take over, right? Especially for guys like us that are entrepreneurs. And the whole point of business is growth, right? If the business isn't growing and it's not making money, then the business is not going to work.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. So if you're not careful, you can let your ambition take over, and you just work. And I kind of struggled with that our first year here because of COVID, right? We were down to 5 employees, and we're still delivering cars. And I was literally hand delivering every car to people's front door because they couldn't come in the dealership. And, we only had like 2 technicians working, and it's not like service was slammed because nobody was coming out of their house and all that.
Right.
But I was getting up, and I was getting to the store at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't leaving till 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I got to a point where I really didn't have a relationship with my son. My wife and I, we were not in a good spot, and it was just due to the fact that my ambition had kind of taken over. I was like, I'm going to singly will this thing through, and I forgot that I had a partner.
And I look at both of you guys' situation. I mean, I grew up here. So I have a lot of family, and she has family here, but you guys both came to this area, and you guys were both running a business. So sometimes if you focus too much on it, and you weren't leaning on your partner, or you didn't give a shoulder for your partner to lean on, I couldn't imagine how much little drama that could cause.
It can get tense.
Yeah,
it can really get tense, and that's why I think I was very fortunate that. Like we've talked about this before, I kind of had that crack, right, where I had a breakdown, and I started to really assess what was important and had value in my life, and I realized that my family had more value to me than this business.
Yeah,
and so I made a big transition in that moment to where I quit focusing on spending so much time at the store and started focusing more on how am I going to be able to spend time with my family. And now over the last, probably year and a half, it's been an amazing transition. I have an amazing relationship with my son. I have a beautiful relationship with my wife. We have this amazing network of people and friends around us that we're able to pour into, and they pour into us, and it's a really neat community of people that we're associated with. And I think those are all factors that will calculate into a successful life, right?
Right.
Not just a successful business. Because I know a lot of guys, kind of like your buddy, they have these huge, monstrous, amazing businesses, but yet they have no relationship with their family. They have no relationship with their wife, no relationship with their kids. They don't really have any meaningful relationships outside of a couple guys that they really just brag about what they got, and their egos all get in the way.
And that's the conversation I had with them, because I asked him about a mutual friend, and he said that they no longer talked, and that's when we got into the conversation about it. And he made a point and said, like, look, I hit my goal, but I hurt a lot of people along the way, and I ignored people that I shouldn't have. and he wishes that he was celebrating that moment with his family. And I'm glad you guys are sharing some of your personal stuff, because it's a balance. Like you said, you caught yourself like, I didn't have a relationship with my son. I was going through it with my wife, but you figured out how to balance the work life with the personal stuff.
Yeah, you have to. I'm very thankful that what happened in my life happened, because it did give me a different perspective. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to appreciate people more, allowed me to be vulnerable in relationships and things of that nature. So it was a good thing. So one of the things that I think people don't really value either is having a relationship where you can get out, like a friendship, where you can get out with your buddy and actually enjoy each other without having that competitive grind, mm-hmm. right? Like Greg and I, we get out, we golf together probably once, twice a month. We've actually got a little team of guys that we call the lettuce heads. And we've played in a couple charity events together and had some fun, and it's a group of guys that we really get along. Right. Like there's nobody out there throwing clubs or, acting like they're the best golfer in the world, and they're not, it's like, it's fun.
Right.
And you're laughing with each other, you're cutting up. And there's just there's a place in your soul that enjoys that, and it builds you up, kind of like it's a brotherhood, mm-hmm. right? And I think it's essential for people to have those kinds of relationships. People need to have a Greg in their life that is, solid as a rock, enjoyable to be around. You can when you plan events or things, and they're going to be there, you look forward to it.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. I don't think there's a lot of people that have that in their life. They don't have that kind of friendship in their life, mm-hmm. much less one that's, as driven as he is, right? And it has the established life that he has built over the course of his lifetime. Mm-hmm. 27 years married is an anomaly anymore. Yeah. It seems like. And I just have so much respect for that.
That's a great accomplishment. And again, it's my wife, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I love her to death. She is too stubborn to let her marriage fail.
Yeah.
She's strong, and she's just not going to let it happen. And that's come with a lot of leniency for mm-hmm. me. But I'm trying to get a little more bud time. That's hard. I still have to say, is it okay if I golf with the guys on a certain day?
The lettuce heads must ride again.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's important too, who you surround yourself with. And you've the people you've introduced me to, Josh, it's you guys have each other's back. And I think that's important when it comes to business, good business people, and hanging out with the right people on your personal time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true, because where are you going to spend that time? Time is the most valuable currency you have in your life. Mm-hmm. And where you spend it is one of the most important decisions that you make.
Yeah.
And and the thing about that piece of your life is you have to make that decision every day, multiple times a day.
Split second, yep.
It never goes away. And I love because that's kind of what this adversity is about, right? And that's, Greg, I really appreciate you just, sharing your story and talking about the different things you've overcome to get to where you're at now. Because where he's at now is incredible, mm-hmm. And we've not really tapped into too much of that. But I mean, the guy works on people's houses that are, these are $25 million to $50 million properties. Mm-hmm. And he has been able to see some of the most beautiful properties out there, especially in the PCH, to hear some of the stories that he's been able to share with me over the course of the last couple of years of just some of the properties that he's even just been a part of or even bid. And then kind of to hear some of the people, right, mm-hmm. that are behind some of those properties and just the different way of thinking that some of those guys have. It's like there's a lot of value that comes with being able to hear that kind of information that you can apply. Because quite honestly, some of those people you don't want to be like, some of them you do.
Right.
Some of them you may respect because they've got the big house that's overlooking the PCH with all the windows, but we don't realize it. They're the only person in there because they were kind of one of those people that had the ambition, right? So they don't have any family to share that with, and that's kind of, you know, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But then you got the flip side too, where there's guys that have that same house and it's full of family, right? And they're just these amazing people that have done amazing things, and they've just worked really hard and been very diligent with their resources. So you learn that it doesn't really matter what kind of house you live in. It's what are you putting in that house, and if you're filling it with people, then you're filling it with love, right? You're filling it with something that's timeless. But if all you're filling it with is $1 million pieces of art and $100,000 couches, and you know it's just a showpiece, then it's just empty.
Yeah, it goes back to what my friend told me. Like one thing that always stands out since our conversation was, I wish my family was here to enjoy this with me, because that was his goal in the first place. And now that he reached the finish line for himself, it's like, oh man, like I burned these bridges. Yeah, my wife and kids ain't no longer with me, so it's I couldn't even imagine being in that situation.
That's a sad story.
It is, man. There's no point crossing the finish line if there's nobody there to give you the water.
Yeah, and the thing too that I want to point out, it's like this guy reached success, what he wanted, and he was still not happy,
right? Because
his family wasn't there with him.
Yeah, that's a key element.
Yeah, man. The sooner you can find that out in your life, you know what the important things are, the better off you are. I don't think I was real quick on the pickup on that. I'm still appreciating it every day, actually. But yeah,
but I'm glad you shared that. I want to point that out, that when you seen that number and you're like, wait a minute, I'm only getting this. I hope you got that number though.
We got to fix that.
Well, you know, it makes you curious, and then you realize what overhead is, right? Yeah. And it's it's incredible. And I mean, there's just so much in the business model I was working in at the time. There was so much overhead, and I couldn't fathom it as a young person and as a salesperson. I just didn't have that mentality.
Right.
But now it's like, okay, what if all the overhead was ours, and we were paying off, you know, some of our stuff, and we could make that work for us, instead of against us. That was kind of a different. It's a totally different world.
Yeah.
When you're self-employed.
Well, I'm glad you made that move.
Me too, buddy. Me too.
Great story today, man.
Yeah, that was good. That was real good.
Yeah, and of course, Josh, you're always bringing the great guests, man. I can't wait to hear the next one.
Well, I look forward to bringing the next one. We're gonna, we'll be back doing this next Friday again and kind of keeping the ball rolling. And Greg, I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day to come visit with us and hang out with us. And
thank you very much.
Share your story. He's one of my rocks, so it's good to have him here.
All right, thank you guys for checking out the Adversity Podcast, real stories from real people.
Peace.